today and look forward to your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I have to live up to that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Johnny, for as well for inviting me here today. I thought I would talk to you a little bit about the future of the Internet. And I know that there's a great brain trust in this room right now. There's a great range of expertise on various Internet issues, so I'm excited to make this a dialogue as well. Often the way the issues are sliced is a little bit cantonized. It's okay, we've got privacy and intellectual property and access and that sort of thing. I want to give a view that's a little bit more holistic of where I see the technology going, because I think we're at a very interesting point in history right now. So I want to give you a bit of my sense of the history of it, where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. And then in the discussion, I'd be delighted to take some of the more common issues of privacy and property and speech and that sort of thing and fit them into this framework of where the technology may be going. And I also may, if I can sufficiently cause enough trouble, actually have some people pushing back and saying, you know, I'm not sure that the future is where it is. And I'm an academic, so it's great when people disagree with me. It gives me a chance to say, yes, but have you read my paper on And it's more subtle when it's an answer to a question, when it's just, please read my papers. So, a little bit of history, as promised. And first I want to frame it with just an observation that is a bit attention-grabbing. So attention-grabbing, I didn't even put it into the introduction of the book that is just about to come out that I won't tell you about except an answer to a question. But I think it's actually a useful framing device. In North Korea, the radios by law, the handheld, actual physical radios, must be designed so that they can only be tuned to one of a handful of radio stations. You can't actually turn the dial in North Korea. If you have such a device, you're in big trouble, to listen to frequencies in between, the 3 approved frequencies, the Kim Jong-il Appreciation Hour, the Kim Il-sung Reflection Hour, and Rhythm and Blues. So in South Korea, there's a group that has an idea of taking little solar-powered FM radios of just the normal, cheap variety, €1 radio, and actually putting them onto helium balloons and floating them across the demilitarized zone in order to give people technology that has a little bit more flexibility than that which they currently have. And that's a very striking situation to me, and one I just want you to keep in mind as I tell you about my sense of the history. So step 0 of the history is a movement from technologies that I call sterile to technologies that I call generative. And I'll explain both, mostly by example, as we go. So I told you the history. This is Herman Hollerith. And in 1880, he was a clerk at the U.S. Census Bureau. He was responsible for helping to count the number of people in the United States, which in 1880, despite the fact that there were fewer people than there are now, was a particularly boring and time-consuming job. He figured there had to be a better way, and he thought of it. He was inspired by these. On the left, the jacquard loom with holes indicating where thread should go into a tapestry, and on the right, a simple train ticket, where a hole in one place or another indicates both the rights and the privileges of the holder of the ticket. And with those inspirations, he came up with this idea, a simple card that could be used by people from the census as they were interviewing citizens, and they could punch holes in it to indicate nationality, nationality of spouse, age, all this sort of thing, and then take the cards and put them into this machine that he designed, called the automatic tabulating machine. And this machine would have electricity go through where the holes were, and that electrical current would increment a counter up here, one counter for each possible answer to a section of the card. And with that, it did. The U.S. adopted this for the 1890 census, and what had previously taken a dangerous 7.5 years, close to the 10-year intervals at which Shensai were done, it was reduced to about 2 years, thanks to Hollerith's innovation. Now, Hollerith wasn't just a technology entrepreneur, he was a business entrepreneur. He had the foresight not to sell these machines to the U.S. government, but to rent them at $50,000 per machine per year in 1890 dollars. And that was before the U.S. dollar went back. This was a very good idea. It also meant that for the rental, he was responsible for the task being completed. If the machine didn't operate as planned, it was Hollerith's problem, not the client's. That's what he was earning that rental for. And that became a model of computing, ultimately, that persisted through the 20th century. Because it turns out that this card and this model from Herman Hollerith ended up getting merged and bought, and eventually Automatic Tabulating Machines Company became International Business Machines. And after a brief detour into the sale of Browning semi-automatic rifles in the early 20th century, IBM returned to its business computing roots. And this card is the direct ancestor of this card. The data card that would be put into stacks that look like this, and have this little diagonal line. Does anybody here remember the diagonal line? This is a test of the brain trust. If one of your friends spilled them all over the floor, you'd have a hope of reassembling them in the order in which they were supposed to be, thanks to that line. And then you would feed these cards into a machine like this, the IBM System 360. This is a machine that screams out, "Don't come near me." Right? You will die if you try to operate me and you don't know what you're doing. And that is a direct outgrowth of the original Hollerith model. IBM essentially rented this equipment to the businesses whose solutions they provided. And what they were renting were answers to problems that were very formally specified and designed ahead of time. And then these machines in the basement of the client's buildings would be used to solve it. Now, these were general-purpose computers. They could be used for any number of purposes depending on how the cards programmed them. But it was basically IBM people doing the programming. And that's why I still call this a sterile technology. Sterile in the sense that it's not going to do new and surprising things. It's not going to give birth to unusual applications because so much of it is run by people in lab coats. You know, the new things will come through essentially in vitro fertilization. Okay, another set of technologies from the 20th century on a different track but still sterile. I don't know if anybody remembers the Frieden Flexowriter. Frieden Flexowriter, here's an early World War II version of it. Like a Royal typewriter, except it has this place along the left where you could thread a tape. And as you put the tape through it and you type, it makes holes in the tape. You put the tape back through later on, like a player piano, it will type whatever had been on the tape. It also means that you could actually cut and paste your way to a mail merge using the tape more easily than you can with Microsoft Word. Am I right that there are no Microsoft people here today? Excellent. So this kind of device is an inversion of the IBM System 360. It's an inversion along two dimensions. Dimension number one is, unlike the 360, which is generally programmable depending on the cards that go into it, this is designed for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's all it does. The other inversion is that you can get near it. It's not telling you, don't come near me. This is for secretaries, for assistants, for anybody who needs it. It's an appliance. You can get near it and it won't break by just typing on it. It's meant to be much more accessible, even though, for all the access, it's not reconfigurable. And as a result, despite the access, it is a sterile technology. It's not going to be doing anything particularly new, since it can't be reprogrammed. And it has its own descendants. This is, after it got bought by Burroughs in the late 1960s, a version of the smart typewriter. Here it is into the 1980s in America. The Brother word processor. I don't know how many people remember using a smart word processor like this back in the day. Yeah.